America's not breaking, it's already broken. Grocery bills are up 32%, rent is up 40%, and 63% of Americans now live paycheck to paycheck. But this isn't just inflation, it's collapse. Stores are closing, schools are failing, doctors are vanishing. You're not imagining it, daily life is disintegrating. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why. And what's coming next? You want to talk about collapse? Let's look at public transit, because right now, America's transportation systems are falling apart faster than they can duct tape them back together. In city after city, buses don't show up, trains derail, and entire subway systems feel like a death trap wrapped in graffiti. In places like New York, Chicago, San Francisco, once hailed as examples of American mobility, residents are now waiting 45 minutes for trains that used to arrive every 6. And when they do show up, they're overcrowded, leaking, and staffed by employees who haven't had a full contract negotiation in years. The Federal Transit Administration admitted that over 53% of transit infrastructure is in poor or marginal condition, with more than $176 billion in backlog just to make basic repairs. And that number increases every year. We're not catching up. We're falling further behind. Meanwhile, crime and violence on trains have skyrocketed. New York's MTA recorded a 53% increase in subway assaults in 2023, and that's just what got reported. Homeless encampments inside stations are the new normal. Fare evasion is so rampant it's costing systems billions annually. Washington, D.C.'s Metro, it's on life support, needing $750 million a year in bailouts just to avoid service cuts. And rural America? Forget it. Entire counties don't even have one bus. Working-class Americans who relied on cheap public transport are now paying $700 a month just to Uber to work because their local routes were slashed or privatized. And even in cities that still have systems running, service is down 30 to 50% compared to pre-COVID levels. That means fewer routes, longer wait times, and higher costs. You ever try getting to a hospital, a job interview, or a school on time when your only bus of the day is canceled? This isn't inconvenience, it's entrapment. It locks millions out of opportunity, out of jobs, out of society. When a country can't move its people efficiently, daily life implodes from the inside out. And the worst part? While we send billions overseas, our own bridges and bus stops crumble. The American transportation promise, mobility, freedom, access, has been reduced to a sputtering joke. This is collapse not on paper, but on pavement. Infrastructure rot. You want to see what a dying superpower looks like? Look under your feet, literally. America's physical infrastructure is decaying so fast that engineers now call it crisis level. Roads are cracking. Bridges are collapsing. Water mains are exploding beneath city streets like landmines. And the numbers don't lie. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave the U.S. a C overall grade in 2023, with over 42% of roads in poor or mediocre condition, and 178 million daily bridge crossings over structurally deficient spans. That means you are probably driving over a bridge that's one rainstorm away from becoming a death trap. But it doesn't stop there. Water systems that were installed during World War II are still in use. An estimated 6 billion gallons of treated water are lost to leaky pipes every single day. That's enough to supply the entire state of Florida, just gone. And lead pipes? Still serving over 9 million homes. In cities like Jackson, Mississippi, or Flint, Michigan, children have been drinking poisoned water for years, and nothing changes. Power grids? Fragile as glass. California blackouts? Texas grid failures, rolling outages across the Midwest, all signs of systems stretched past the point of failure. A single ice storm now costs billions and plunges entire regions into medieval living conditions. And let's talk internet, the so-called digital infrastructure. Nearly 42 million Americans still don't have access to reliable broadband, making it impossible to work from home, attend school, or access modern services. That's not just a tech gap. That's a survival gap in a digital economy. Even airports, once gleaming symbols of American progress, now rank behind countries like Qatar, Singapore, and even Turkey in efficiency, cleanliness, and punctuality. And while Congress pats itself on the back for passing infrastructure bills, Most of that money gets eaten up by bureaucracy, lawsuits, and studies that never turn into concrete. Meanwhile, China builds entire high-speed rail systems in under 2 years. We can't even fix a pothole without a 6-month permit process and 3 lawsuits. The rot is real. It's visible. It's breaking down the glue that holds daily life together. When your pipes poison you, your roads trap you, and your power shuts off without warning, that's not inconvenience. That's the skeleton of a dying empire crumbling beneath its own weight. Collapse of public schools. Let's be brutally honest. America's public school system isn't underperforming, it's collapsing. And that collapse is now warping everyday life for parents, students, and entire communities. Across the country, test scores have dropped to levels not seen since the early 1990s. The National Assessment of Educational Progress, NAEP, shows reading and math proficiency falling off a cliff, with only 33% of 8th graders reading at grade level in 2024, a catastrophic drop from pre-pandemic numbers. But it's not just about scores, it's about chaos in the classroom. Teacher shortages are so severe that 25% of public schools are staffed by uncertified or substitute teachers. In Arizona, anyone with a pulse and a GED can teach now, no degree required. In Texas, some schools are turning to 4-day weeks, not to improve outcomes, but because they literally can't staff the 5th day. And for the teachers still holding the line, burnout is epidemic. A full 55% say they're planning to leave within 2 years. Why? Low pay, no support, constant abuse, and now violence. School fights have tripled in some districts. Mental health crises among students have exploded. And security budgets are ballooning because some campuses now resemble war zones more than learning environments. Add to that the insane politicization of curriculum, where state legislatures are banning books, rewriting history, and turning classrooms into ideological battlegrounds, and you get a system no one can trust. Parents are pulling kids out in record numbers. Homeschooling is up 78% since 2019, and charter schools are overwhelmed. But those options are for the privileged. The poor are stuck in overcrowded classrooms with broken HVAC, outdated materials, and underpaid staff. In Baltimore, dozens of schools reported 0 students testing proficient in math. In Mississippi, children are drinking lead-contaminated water from school fountains. How do you raise a generation in that environment? You don't. You create a permanent underclass of Americans who can't read, can't reason, and can't rise. This isn't a system that's failing. It's a system that's being allowed to collapse on purpose, and it's dragging entire communities down with it. One of the most dangerous signs that everyday life is collapsing: you can't find a doctor even when your life depends on it. Across the U.S., we are now facing the worst healthcare labor shortage in modern history. The Association of American Medical Colleges predicts a shortage of over 124,000 doctors by 2034, and it's already started. Try booking a specialist appointment in any city right now. 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 6 months. Dermatologists, cardiologists, even pediatricians are vanishing from working-class areas. Primary care physicians are fleeing the system in record numbers, retiring early, or moving into concierge medicine where only the rich can follow. Emergency rooms are overcrowded, not just because of patients, but because there's no staff to triage, no beds to admit, and no physicians to treat. Nearly 1 in 5 nurses quit during the pandemic and never came back, and the new crop can't keep up. Travel nurses are filling gaps at triple the cost, bleeding hospitals dry. The result? A ticking time bomb. In some rural counties, there isn't a single OBGYN. That means pregnant women are forced to drive 2, 3, even 4 hours just to give birth. Some don't make it. Maternal mortality in the U.S. is now more than triple that of most developed countries, and black mothers are dying at nearly 3 times the rate of white mothers. These aren't just statistics. These are death sentences baked into geography and poverty. In urban areas, emergency departments are shutting down. In Los Angeles, over a dozen ERs closed or scaled back between 2020 and 2023. In Chicago, trauma centers are closing in neighborhoods that need them most. And let's not forget the mental health collapse. Psychiatrists are in such short supply that children are being turned away from crisis care or put on 12-month wait lists. Suicides are rising, Addiction is out of control, and yet there's no one to answer the call. Healthcare used to be a pillar of American stability. Now, it's become a ghost town staffed by skeleton crews. When you can't find a doctor, can't afford your meds, and can't even get seen in an emergency, that's collapse. That's the moment you realize this isn't the land of the free. It's the land of you're on your own. If your house catches fire in 2026, you better hope someone's free to answer the call, because America's emergency services are falling apart right in front of us. Fire departments, EMTs, paramedics, and even 911 dispatch systems are being gutted by budget cuts, staff burnout, and record attrition. It's now common for entire towns to operate with volunteer-only fire crews, many with no formal training and outdated equipment. In some cases, a single firefighter covers an entire overnight shift, armed with a pager and prayer. In rural states like Kansas and Montana, departments have started crowdfunding for basic equipment, begging the public for hoses, helmets, and diesel fuel. Meanwhile, the average age of a firefighter in America is now over 45, with recruitment down 25% in the last 5 years. People simply don't want to do a life-threatening job for $17 an hour anymore. And then there's the ambulance crisis. In Oregon, some counties have only 2 or 3 ambulances covering 2,000 square miles. Response times have stretched from 8 minutes to over 40. That's not just an inconvenience, that's a death sentence for strokes, overdoses, and cardiac arrests. In New York City, emergency dispatchers are so overwhelmed they've started triaging calls, deciding who gets help and who doesn't based on perceived urgency, not need. Some cities are deploying AI bots to filter 911 calls because there aren't enough humans to pick up the phone. And police? We're in a full-blown collapse. Over 60% of departments report severe staffing shortages, with resignations and retirements outpacing new hires by nearly 2 to 1. In places like San Francisco, petty crimes go completely uninvestigated. In Portland, entire units have been disbanded. Response times for nonviolent calls can exceed 2 hours if they show up at all. That means domestic violence calls, mental health crises, or thefts in progress may never get answered. When you call for help and nobody comes, that's not just a system glitch, it's civil decay. Emergency services are supposed to be the final line of protection for the American public. When that line breaks, so does the illusion of order. This is collapse not in theory, but in sirens that never arrive. The American middle class is dead, and what's left of it is drowning. The lifestyle that once defined stability, a home, a car, 2 kids, a vacation, and maybe some savings, is now out of reach for over 70% of working Americans. The numbers don't lie. In 2023, the median household income in the U.S. was $74,580, but the cost of a middle-class lifestyle is now estimated at $108,000 to $120,000 per year, depending on region. That's a $40,000 gap every single year just to tread water. And we're not even talking luxury. We're talking basic survival with dignity. Groceries are up over 30% since 2019. Daycare costs now rival college tuition, with average monthly rates nearing $1,200 per child. Health insurance premiums? $2,000 a month for a family of 4 on the private market, not counting out-of-pocket expenses. Meanwhile, rent continues to climb. The median rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in many cities is over $2,400 per month, and home ownership is becoming a fantasy. A $400,000 home, once the middle-class norm, now requires $80,000 down and $3,200 a month in mortgage, taxes, and insurance. And that's if your credit score is over 720. Car payments, once manageable, are now crippling. The average new car loan hit $739 per month in 2024, while auto loan delinquencies reached a 17-year high. The middle class isn't just squeezed, it's hemorrhaging. Families are cutting corners on food, skipping dental visits, pulling kids from sports, and defaulting on loans just to keep the lights on. Savings? Gone. Credit card debt hit a record $1.13 trillion, with over 60% of Americans unable to cover a $500 emergency. Retirement accounts are being raided to pay rent. Side hustles, once extra, are now mandatory. 43% of full-time workers now hold a second job not to get ahead, but to survive. This isn't a dip. This is a collapse in the very concept of economic security. What used to be normal now requires upper-class income. And what used to be affordable is now a luxury. The American middle class hasn't just declined, it's been erased. What remains is a shell of insecurity, where working harder doesn't lead to progress, just slower collapse. Food insecurity goes mainstream. You don't hear this talked about honestly, but food insecurity is no longer a fringe problem in America. It's becoming a middle-class reality, and that alone should terrify you. According to the USDA's most recent data, over 44 million Americans now live in food-insecure households, including more than 13 million children, and those numbers understate the crisis because they don't capture families quietly skipping meals to protect their kids. What's different now is who is lining up at food banks. These aren't unemployed drifters, they're nurses, teachers, warehouse workers, even dual-income households. Feeding America reports that food bank demand is up over 30% compared to pre-2020 levels, even as charitable donations are falling. Why? Because grocery inflation hasn't reversed, it's stabilized at a higher permanent baseline. Beef prices remain up over 35% since 2019, poultry over 25%, and fresh produce has become so volatile that many stores simply don't stock it consistently anymore. Behind the scenes, the system is cracking. Fertilizer prices remain elevated due to global supply disruptions and export controls. Diesel costs, which determine how food moves, remain unstable. And quietly, major food manufacturers have been shrinking package sizes while raising prices, a tactic called stealth inflation that drains households without triggering outrage. A cereal box that once lasted a week now lasts 3 days. Even school lunch programs are buckling. Districts across the country are reducing portion sizes or eliminating menu items entirely because they can't afford protein. Seniors on fixed incomes are being hit hardest. Social Security COLA increases sound generous until you realize food inflation for seniors runs nearly double the headline CPI due to higher medical and dietary needs. Many are choosing between groceries and medication. Rural food deserts are expanding fast. Over 6 million Americans now live more than 10 miles from a grocery store, forcing reliance on dollar stores with nutritionally barren options. And once nutrition collapses, everything else follows: health, productivity, cognitive development. Hunger doesn't just weaken bodies, it erodes societies. A country where millions of people worry about their next meal isn't experiencing hardship, it's experiencing systemic failure. When food security collapses, daily life becomes survival mode. And America is already there. Mental health breakdown and social isolation. This part of the collapse doesn't make headlines, but it's quietly destroying everyday life from the inside out. America is in the middle of a full-scale mental health breakdown, and the system is utterly unprepared to handle it. Anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and social withdrawal are now normalized not because they're mild, but because they're everywhere. The CDC reports that over 1 in 5 adults now experience a diagnosable mental illness, and among young adults under 30, that number jumps closer to 1 in 3. Antidepressant use has surged, therapy waitlists stretch for months, and psychiatric emergency visits have exploded, yet access to care keeps shrinking. More than 160 mental health facilities closed in the past decade, and inpatient psychiatric beds have been cut so deeply that patients in crisis are often held in ER hallways for days. But here's the part people don't connect. Economic collapse feeds psychological collapse. Chronic financial stress rewires the brain. When people live paycheck to paycheck with no margin for error, cortisol stays elevated, sleep degrades, decision-making deteriorates, and impulsive behavior rises. That's why overdoses hit record highs again in 2024, with fentanyl now the leading cause of death for adults aged 18 to 49. Alcohol consumption is up sharply. Gambling addiction fueled by legalized sports betting is exploding, quietly draining household finances even further. Meanwhile, social isolation has become structural. Remote work, digital entertainment, and economic stress have hollowed out community life. Churches, clubs, civic groups, all in decline. The average American now reports having fewer than 3 close friends, and millions report having none. Loneliness has reached such severe levels that the U.S. Surgeon General formally declared it a public health crisis, linking it directly to increased risk of heart disease, dementia, and early death. This isolation makes people angrier, more polarized, more distrustful, and easier to manipulate. When mental health collapses, social trust collapses with it. People stop caring about institutions, rules, or each other. They withdraw, numb themselves, or lash out. This isn't just sadness, it's societal disintegration. A nation can survive inflation, debt, even political chaos. What it cannot survive is a population that is emotionally exhausted, isolated, and psychologically broken. And that's exactly where America is drifting. When everyday life collapses, it doesn't start with riots or revolutions. It starts when people stop believing. And right now, Americans have stopped believing in every major institution that once gave this country a foundation. Government, corporations, the media, education, the justice system, none of them are trusted anymore. Gallup's latest confidence polls show it clear as day. Trust in Congress is at an all-time low of just 8%. The presidency? 23%. The Supreme Court? 27%. And the numbers are even lower among younger generations. The reality is, Americans no longer believe that anyone in power is working for them. Whether you're left, right, or completely checked out, the overwhelming feeling is the same. They don't care about us. That sentiment alone is fuel for collapse. Because without trust, nothing works, not elections, not law enforcement, not public health, not even education. We saw it during COVID. Public messaging fell apart, not just because of bad science or poor communication, but because no one trusted the people giving the orders. And once that trust is gone, even well-meaning policies get treated like threats. Schools push new curriculums, and half the country revolts. Cities announce new zoning rules, and neighborhoods explode in protest. Every issue becomes a war, because there's no shared sense of legitimacy anymore. And let's talk about elections, because even the most basic pillar of democracy is unraveling. Half the country now believes the last presidential election was stolen. That's not a fringe belief, it's mainstream. And it's not about facts anymore, it's about faith. If people no longer believe that voting works, they stop participating. Or worse, they take matters into their own hands. That's how societies crack. Quietly, through disillusionment, until the only voices left are angry, desperate, or extreme. Even institutions like the FBI, IRS, or CDC, once universally respected, are now seen by millions as corrupt or weaponized. That's new. That's dangerous. And the media? Forget it. The very thing that's supposed to keep power in check is seen as part of the machine. 2/3 of Americans believe the media actively misleads them. Once trust collapses, coordination collapses. Civic duty dies. Every crisis becomes politicized. Every disaster becomes conspiracy. When people can't tell truth from propaganda, and when no institution is believed, not even the courts or the Constitution, what you have is a country unmoored from reality. The lights may still be on. The streets may still be paved. But everyday life has already collapsed because the glue that holds us together is gone. 2 Americas, 1 country, a permanent state of division. This is the collapse no one wants to admit, because it's not caused by inflation or debt or crumbling roads. It's deeper than that. America is no longer 1 country, it's 2 nations trapped inside a single flag. And that is the final, irreversible fracture of everyday life. We don't live in a divided country. We live in parallel civilizations that don't speak the same language, don't watch the same news, don't believe in the same facts, and don't even agree on what freedom means. One America sees January 6th as a terrorist insurrection. The other sees it as a protest against a stolen election. One America believes climate change is a global emergency. The other sees it as a hoax to justify control. One America says, trust the science. The other says, you lied to us too many times. And in between, tens of millions who've given up entirely, tuning out from politics, refusing to vote, living paycheck to paycheck in a fog of apathy. This level of division is not sustainable. And it's not just ideological, it's geographic, economic, and spiritual. Wealth has been vacuumed into coastal cities while entire rural counties are stuck in 1975 with no broadband, no investment, and no jobs. Urban centers and red states are moving in opposite directions on law, taxes, education, and even which laws they'll enforce. Governors are openly defying federal policies. States are passing legislation daring the Supreme Court to intervene. Sheriffs are refusing to uphold gun laws. Cities are declaring sanctuary status in direct opposition to national immigration enforcement. These aren't political squabbles, they're soft secession. We are watching the United States disassemble itself in slow motion, from the inside out. And it gets worse with every election. Every 4 years, half the country wakes up feeling like they lost their nation. That's not democracy, that's cold civil war. And yes, civil war is a loaded term. But ask yourself this: when trust dies, when families stop speaking over politics, when people stockpile weapons for when it all breaks down, hasn't it already started? Not with muskets and cannons, but with the everyday unraveling of shared identity. That is the final collapse not of buildings or banks, but of belonging. We don't collapse all at once. We collapse as strangers, walking the same streets, living in different realities, waiting for the moment we stop pretending we're still one nation. This isn't just a recession. This is systemic decay. You're not just paying more, you're getting less. Less safety, less stability, less future. And the worst part? Nobody's coming to fix it. Not the politicians, not the billionaires, not the Fed. The collapse of everyday life isn't happening tomorrow, it's happening right now, quietly, while you're just trying to survive. So if this hit home, if any part of you felt that truth in your gut, don't scroll away. Comment below, tell me what you're seeing where you live, and share this before they try to silence it. Because the more people know, the harder we are to control.